The COVID-19 pandemic has devastated the reputation of the United States and may well signal the end of an American era. That's according to our next guest, Wade Davis. Dr. Davis is a really remarkable man, a PhD in ethnobotany from Harvard. He spent over 3 years in the Amazon and Andes as a plant explorer, living among 15 indigenous groups in 8 Latin American nations while making some 6,000 botanical collections. He's an acclaimed author, academic photographer and leadership chair in, wait for this, Cultures and Ecosystems at Risk at the University of British Columbia. And it's the USA he's studying in a really stunning essay just published in Rolling Stone magazine titled The Unravelling of America. It frequently stops you in your tracks as it considers what the COVID-19 epidemic has revealed about the, and I quote, the illusion of American exceptionalism. Dr. Wade Davis, what a treat to have you beaming in from Vancouver. Thank you so much. Kia ora, welcome to Breakfast and welcome to Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's lovely to have you with us.
Thank you, John.
What I'd like to do is just get you to read it, actually. I'm just going to lean back and you can read the entire thing. It's so damn good. But I want to quote, I just want to work through a series of quotes, and it kind of in a linear order. Never in our lives have we experienced such a global phenomenon. For the first time in the history of the world, all of humanity, informed by the unprecedented reach of digital technology, has come together focused on the same existential threat. And as we focus on it, we reveal ourselves also, don't we?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point. You know, the amazing thing about this article, John, is that I was actually coming off a kayak trip, and I just had the thought that COVID wasn't a story of medicine or mortality or morbidity. It was a story of culture and how we are dealing with it. And it's not an anti-American piece. You know, I stress, I'm born Canadian. I married an American. I found my career in the States. My children are dual citizens and so on. It's more like a love letter. You know, it's like when you do a family intervention, you have to hold the mirror, sort of let them see what they've become. And that's the first step in the path of rehabilitation. You know, the epidemics always have a way of having an impact. You know, the Spanish flu killed millions, but it did so in an atmosphere where people were numbed by war because of death by the Great War. You know, the year of Woodstock, when 500,000 kids swam around in the mud and took drugs, 100,000 people died of the Hong Kong flu. In Berlin, they were storing corpses in subway stations, you know. But those didn't have the same impact because it didn't have the global reach of digital communication, and also we weren't traveling the world as we are now. The fascinating thing about this COVID epidemic is that Americans, at a time when 2,000 were dying a day, an American dying every minute of every hour of every day, the nation woke up to realize it was living in a failed state, you know, ruled by a dysfunctional government, led by an individual who was recommending the use of bathroom cleaning chemicals to treat a disease that intellectually he could not begin to understand. And there was a wonderful quote from the Irish Times that said, you know, through history, there have been many emotions expressed about America, but never before pity. And that struck me as the moment. You know, empires come and go. Every kingdom is born to die. The 15th century belonged to the Portuguese, 16th to the Spanish, 17th and the 18th. The British Empire reached its greatest extent in 1935. People were swirling gin and tonics all over the world. It was all still painted red, but of course now we know it was bankrupt and bled white by the Great War. And the sad thing, when Americans, and God bless them, you know, none of this is gloating, none of this is wishing the decline of America. But when they look at themselves in the mirror, they don't see what they've become. I mean, here's a country that on the eve of World War II was demilitarized. Within 3 years, 18 million Americans were in uniform. A country that produced more industrial output. The one company, Ford Motor Company, produced more industrial output than the country of Italy. Here's a great statistic for all my beloved friends in New Zealand. For every 4 pounds of equipment the Japanese Empire of the Sun got per capita to a frontline troop, the Americans got 2 tons shipped overseas. We spun out B-24s by the hour. Liberty ships by the hour. The record for building a Liberty ship was 4 days, 29 hours, and 17 minutes. So what became of that country, a country that emerged from the Second World War with 4% of the world's population 50% of the world's economy, building 90% of the world's cars, allowing for a truce between labor and capital that gave us the middle class. What's happened to that middle class in the wake of 2 decades of globalization? You know, it's fallen apart. And that's the tragedy of America.
And I want to pick up on that point, and I want to quote you again. COVID-19 didn't lay America low. It simply revealed what had long been forsaken. And I want to, one of my favourite paragraphs is this one. More than any other country, the United States in the post-war era lionised the individual at the expense of community and family. It was the sociological equivalent of splitting the atom. What was gained in terms of mobility and personal freedom came at the expense of common purpose.
It's almost as if America doesn't believe not just in community, but in the very notion of society. And, I try to explain that gently to my American friends with a kind of allegory from the grocery store. And I know this to be true in New Zealand because I've been there so many times. And, if there's one country more glorious than Canada, it's got to be your country, I swear. But, when you go to a grocery store in Wellington or Auckland or Christchurch or Vancouver or Montreal, you interact with the checkout person, not necessarily as a peer, but certainly as a member of a wider community. Whereas in the States, you go to your grocery store and there's a kind of an economic, racial, educational class chasm that's very difficult to bridge. And the reason for that is that in New Zealand and in Canada, you may be more affluent than checkout person. You may be more educated than checkout person, but you know that they're getting a decent wage because of the unions. And you know that they know that your kids probably go to the same public school, and those public schools aren't based on local property taxes that favor the rich kids, but are state grants that give equally to all kids. And third and most essential, be it in New Zealand or in Canada, you know that they know that you know that their kids get sick, they get exactly the same medical care as your kids and the Prime Minister's kids. And those three strands in both of our nations woven together become the fabric of New Zealand and Canadian social democracy. And the measure of that is how we both responded to COVID. It's a shocking statistic, John, that on July 30th of this summer, not barely a month ago, on the day that the Americans announced 59,672 new cases of COVID in all of British Columbia, again, concentrated in one major metropolis, an Asian city 2 hours north of where the epidemic came home to America in Seattle, we had 5 patients in all of our hospitals. And it's because we recognize that wealth in a nation, a civilized nation, is not the measure of the currency accumulated by the lucky few, but the strength of social relations and reciprocity enjoyed by the majority that link in common purpose. We're not a perfect place, Canada, but we believe in our institutions, our healthcare system in particular, that is focused not on the individual but the collective, and certainly not on the private investor who views every hospital bed as a rental property. And so what is it that works in New Zealand? I mean, look at the example you've given to the world with COVID. It's simply, I think you're Prime Minister, and boy, if I could ever have a crush on a world figure, I've got one. What a fantastic leader, right? And because she leads with compassion, decency, transparent kindness, and a kind of a intuition about the collective spirit of what it means to be a member of that great country of yours. And we have something of the same in Canada, and that's what is so sorely, I think, missing in the States. And, it's not about Trump. Trump is not the cause. He's a symptom of the decline. And when Americans, for example, make fun of wearing masks, or they rush off to the beaches, or they rush off to convention halls, they're not expressing strength. They're demonstrating the weakness of a people that lack the stoicism to endure the pandemic or the fortitude to defeat it.
Boy, oh boy. So what we'd like to do, Wade Davis, is book you for every morning at this time. I know, you might have a life to attend to in Canada. But by golly, so I'm going to put the link up on our website to your Rolling Stone article, but I want you to, as people who want to read your writing now, so I want you to tell people about your website, because all your books are there. So what's your website if people want to know more about you, Dr. Davis?
I think I'm quite a Luddite, my friend, but I think it's www.daviswade.com. But you can just Google my name, Wade Davis, anthropologist, and I've got a new book about Colombia. I was just made an honorary Colombian citizen. That's a whole other story. And, it's just a pleasure and a real honor to be with you today.
Well, it's a real honor to have you with us. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you.